for a while now. I think I'm now at about, let's see, do some math, almost 9 years using Moodle, which seems really incredible to say. But so I've been using Moodle for a while, and over that time, I've worked in a number of roles with Remote Learner, and I started out working as a trainer, and I traveled around the US delivering training to different teachers and different schools, different organizations, different companies, all different kinds of environments. I then moved into the role of Chief Learning Officer, where I was assisting the instructional design and training teams, and my most recent title is Chief Evangelist. I've been in this role for about a year now, I think, and I totally love it, right? The title is awesome. I couldn't have made up a better one myself. And it really does fit what I do. In my role now, I get to do like Moodle all day long. I hang out at Moodle.org and on Twitter and go to conferences and all sorts of really fun stuff. So over those years, as I've been using Moodle and working with a variety of people, I've noticed some commonalities in what people are using in Moodle and what people aren't using. And my mission is to really get people to think outside of the box, to stretch and use some different tools. And I think this is a great idea to go into the Moot with, so as you look at the sessions that are available, you think about how you can take what you see at the Moot and use it to expand what you're doing. So as we go through the presentation today, I totally love interaction, so if you want to chat and ask questions along the way, please don't hesitate to do that. So a little background information first that really supports the premise that people aren't taking advantage of all of the Moodle tools. Chuck Severance and one of his colleagues, Stephanie Teasley, did some research, and they found that in learning management systems that 95% of all user actions were comprised of document management and broadcast-oriented communication tools. Now, in plain English, what that means is people are using their LMS to post documents, collect work from learners. They're using it to post announcements and maybe do discussion forums. And Martin DeGuyamis, if you've seen him present, he presents similar statistics in terms of what he's been able to gather from the data that comes in from Moodle sites, is that people are like 90% of Moodle usage consists of resources, assignments. We've got quizzes thrown in there and forums. So I'm going to ask you, there's a poll question that many of you found in the corner already. How many of you identify with this statistic? How many of you would say your organization, your Moodle implementation falls into this kind of category? And it's all anonymous, so, Seeing the responses still come in. This is good. So a large number of you feel like you're making progress, and it can take time. Only 9 of you say, yep, we fall squarely in that category, and 9 of you have broken that mold. So that's awesome. Hopefully those who have broken the mold are presenting over the next couple of days, and we can find who they are and figure out, find their secret sauce, figure out how they've done things. Very cool. Okay, so where would I have you go? As we think about that statistic, what this really means, sadly enough, is that so many of you are missing out on some really cool Moodle features, and that your learners are missing out on some awesome opportunities. So there are a number of tools in Moodle, and we could probably talk for several hours about all of the options in Moodle that you're missing out on, but I've boiled it down to just five features that I think you're missing out on, or you may very well be missing out on. And those are book, lesson, glossary, workshop, and conditional activities. And as we go through today and we talk about these different tools, I will ask you to tell me how many of you are using these things. I'm curious to see what sort of implementations we have out there. If you're not familiar with these tools, there are examples of many of these and more information about them in the Keynote course. So that same course that you use to access this session has examples of a variety of those tools, and that will be available to you there for a while. Let's dig deeper on each of these. We'll talk first about the book module. The book module Let's ask this first. How many of you are using the book module? We'll throw up another poll. So how many of you are using the book module? And there's another poll in the lower left corner there. Chad, thanks for posting that link. You don't have it to use. Hopefully it'll change for you soon. And you'll have some good, some good information to take back to those that manage your Moodle site, so you can beg and plead to have that functionality added. Good. Yes, the book is awesome. I love it. So yeah, let's talk about the book functionality before you all cover it, before I have a chance to say it, right? So the book module is, first and foremost, I'd say a content delivery tool. It's it's a tool for delivering content. It's an alternative to PowerPoint. It's an alternative to posting documents. It has lots of advantages and lots of features. One feature, for instance, is it has a built-in table of contents. So as I build my content within the book, the table of contents is automatically, dynamically generated. Every page in the book has a matching link in the table of contents, so the learners can navigate through the content that way. They don't have to use, a big, long, monster scrolling web page. They don't have to worry about opening up the PowerPoint file. They don't have to worry about the Word document, none of that. The navigation is built in, and I love this part about it, is it's nice and seamless. Top and bottom of the page, the learners can click on the arrows forward and back to get through the content, so we don't have to worry about ease of use issues or usability issues. Learners that like to print the content and have it in front of them to hold in their hand, there's a print feature that lets them do that. They can print either the entire book all in one document, or they can print a single page at a time. Now, let's talk about that whole plugin thing, right? In Moodle 1.9 and up until Moodle 2.2, or through Moodle 2.2, the book module was a plugin, and it was a free plugin, so you could go out to moodle.org, download the module, install it. I am not a technical expert, and I have been able to install this module. That's how easy it is to get installed. So if you don't have it, if you're on 1.9, you're going to be on 1.9 for a while, then do some asking. It's really worth it to have it. Ask to see if you can get it installed. The good news is if you're on 2.2 and you're thinking about moving to 2.3 when it comes out in June, 2.3 will have the book module as a standard feature, as a core feature. So forever after, we won't have to worry about going out and getting the plugin. Everybody will have it. And yeah, I know, finally, right? It's taken a while. The book has been around forever. And it will be in core. It will be in core. So that's good news for all of us. We'll have to thank the developers that are working on that. So why use the book module? Why am I such a fan? First of all, it gives you a way to chunk content. As you saw in the screen captures, it has separate short pages that you can create, so you have a little bit of content on each page, as opposed to using like the page resource that's built in, where you could end up with the long scrolling web page. So it lets you break content across pages. It also gives you options for simplifying delivery. We all know that there are potential issues. If I upload a Word document, if I deliver my content as a PDF or a PowerPoint, there are risks. There's a risk that the students don't have the right program, they don't know what to do when it says open or save. Who knows? You've seen all kinds of weird stuff that can happen, right? The nice thing about the book module is because it's built into Moodle, it's built as a web page, I can guarantee that if my learners can access Moodle, they can access this content. There's no risk there. So it simplifies delivery and simplifies access. The students don't have to worry about where that downloaded file went. They don't have to hunt it down. They don't have to have the extra programs. That means they can hop on any computer, wherever, and know that they can get to the content. This also makes your life easier with ease of editing. The same built-in functionality that makes it easy for the learners to access the content means that for you to edit the content, all you have to do is go in, say, edit the page, make the change, save it, and you're finished. If you're uploading Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, even SCORM content, you have to go back to the original file, make the changes there, and then upload it. You know, it's a multi-step process, and we all have better things to do, right? So let's take a look at some of these in detail. So simplifying delivery, what I see a lot of people doing in their own Moodle courses is they have multiple pages because they don't have the book. And then when you present the course or the content in this way, you end up with lots of links running down the course page. It starts to lead to that scroll of death we've all heard so much about in the past and we're working so hard to avoid. So the book lets me simplify the delivery there and streamline that. So I get all of my content in one nice, simple document, and all of those links just become pages within my book. Lets me chunk content, as I talked about, no long scrolling web pages, breaks it up into chunks. Ease of use, you don't have to use any additional programs. Editing is a breeze, and auto-linking is awesome. How many of you use auto-linking on your sites? Like glossary auto-linking, resource auto-linking. If you don't know about auto-linking, this is another thing to put on your list to ask for. And then I'm going to skim back through the chat here in a minute and try to catch up on all the comments. So auto-linking comes in a couple different varieties in Moodle. One type of auto-linking is resource name auto-linking. There's also activity name auto-linking and glossary auto-linking. You can also do wiki auto-linking and database auto-linking, but at a point it just starts to get crazy, right? So I highly recommend the activity name auto-linking, resource name auto-linking, and the glossary auto-linking. I think resource and activity are merged together now in Moodle too. Hey, thanks for that link. What the auto-linking does for me, let's start with a glossary, for instance. And if I have a glossary in my course, words in the glossary are automatically linked when they're used elsewhere in the course. So if I have terminology, vocabulary built into a glossary, if I have my content presented in a book, then I can take advantage of that auto-linking. The students will see a term, maybe it's not familiar, they can click on the link, they have direct access to the glossary entry that explains that term. They don't have to just skip over the language and hope they can figure it out from context. You also have, it's amazing, it's must have. The other thing that auto-linking does for you with the activity name and resource name auto-linking is anytime you write the exact name of an activity within your course, then Moodle will pick that up and go, oh yeah, let's create a link here. So if I have a link, if I have my syllabus in my course, and my syllabus is called syllabus, anywhere in the course I write the word syllabus, it'll automatically link to the syllabus. What I love about this is that if I'm telling students, you know, anytime you have questions, go to the general discussion forum. The students don't have to figure out where that is if they're having trouble. It's a direct link. If I tell the students in this unit you're going to do this, this, and this, and I tell them within the context of a forum or within the context of a book, then they have the links built in right there. They don't have to go hunting for the links. So yeah, this is amazing. I probably should have added this as one of the things you've never used. So auto-linking needs to be turned on at the site level. And in Moodle 2, you have a few more options than you have in Moodle 1.9. In Moodle 1.9, it's all or none. So you turn it on at the site level, everybody gets the functionality, and they don't have any choice about the matter. In Moodle 2, it can be turned on at the site level, and then teachers can choose at the course level which activities they'd like to have that auto-linking turned on. So they can say in a quiz, I don't want the glossary auto-linking turned on because I don't want the links to the correct answers. Yes, we can finally turn it off for a quiz. So you can actually adjust the filters on an activity by activity basis. So you can have the auto-linking where you want it, or not where you don't. So I'm going to skim back through the chat here just a second and see if I can catch up. I think most of you are answering each other's questions, but I don't want to miss out on all the good conversation. So auto-linking is awesome. And I actually use the book and the lesson probably more so. to present my units of content or my lessons to my students, and then they navigate the entire unit or the entire course through that context. So, and then there were questions and comments here about whether or not students could use the book or edit the book. As Floyd says, the book could be edited by students if you change permissions for that particular resource. And that gets to the heart of the way I think. I like to let learners do the work wherever possible. So yeah, I will talk here in a second about other ideas for the book module. Skimming back through the chat, I don't think there are any other lingering questions that I haven't. Yeah, Lynn says it's funny how you can turn things on day one and forget that there's an option to change them. Yeah, you kind of get used to doing things a certain way, and then you have to go looking for the new options. Any drawbacks regarding the book? I'm trying to think. There are other options. I'm going to talk about the lesson next, and we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the book versus the lesson. But I don't know. Up until this point, the downside has been it's a plugin, right? And plugins can be risky, but otherwise, the book is great. Can you export individual books? Yes. So you can back up and restore individual books. Only one sublevel. That is true. And the workflow can be a bit confusing. When you go to create a book, the first page has you basically write the summary of the book, and then you go to the next page and start creating the pages of the book. And invariably, the first time someone goes to create a book, they start writing their content in that first text box. So the workflow can be a bit confusing. I've seen some tracker issues related to improving some of those workflows, but I don't know if they've addressed that specific issue. File and resource management on each page. You actually, for file and resource management, you're using the HTML editor. So you can add files and add resources within the pages from there. And the book can be exported to IMS, yes. Good tip, Todd. Link to the assignments, place them on a lower topic or an orphaned topic. Set the settings so the topic doesn't appear. So you can actually lead your learners all the way through the content, through assignments, through forums, all through the context of a book without having them scroll through the course page. All right, we're going to get stuck here. So think outside of the box. Other possibilities for the book module. Student-generated content, as someone suggested before. So you can allow the learners to create the content of the book. As I mentioned before, teachers have plenty of things to do. So think about how your learners, and I know some of you might be thinking, well, we're talking about education academic environments. This is valid in corporate training environments, professional development environments as well. Let the learners generate the content. There's so much information out there. This works all the way from the lowest grade levels up to adult learners. Use this as an alternative to student presentations. In lots of schools, learners have created PowerPoint presentations a million times before. Give them a different tool. With the HTML editor, the book module offers some interesting opportunities that they don't have with PowerPoint. So it gives them a different medium, give them something else to try. Another possibility would be think about public-facing information. So you have information you want to convey to your customers, to parents, to the students. You can put books on the front page of the website, set those up to be available to anyone and everyone, and present content that way. And as you think about the visitors to your site, the more you go outside of your core client base, the less control you have over what tools and what functionality they have. So if you're uploading PDFs and documents, you have a greater risk that they can't open those things. So the book can be a nice way around that. Questions about the book before we talk about the lesson? And I'll give you a chance to respond to that poll there. How many of you are using the lesson? Best training video for book? I don't have one off the top of my head. This is one of the huge advantages of the book, is it's so simple. Aside from that initial, settings page where people try to write the content, the amount of training you spend on the book is minimal. So lesson, tried it without success. I will say that the lesson was one of the last two tools I learned to use. The lesson and the workshop were the last two because they were the most complex, in my opinion. And we have 15 of you who haven't tried it. So this is your opportunity, right? Pick up something new. The lesson module and the book module really have a lot of similarities. And I was having an interesting conversation just recently about how we're going to explain the differences, or how people are going to think about the differences between the book and the lesson when they're both included as part of core. When I think of the book, I'm now going to think really as content delivery. When I think of the lesson, I'm really going to start to think about that as, yes, as content delivery, but for all of its additional features and the ability to do formative assessment and more interactive kinds of content. So the lesson module, just like the book module, can allow you to do linear content delivery. You can have a table of contents there if you'd like. In the lesson, though, you have a choice. You don't have to have a table of contents. You can choose when that table of contents appears. You want to make sure that the learners get through so much of the content before they get to see the rest of the lesson. You can do that. You have a lot more flexibility there. Throwing questions, a lesson couldn't be backed up. Is possible. I know there have been some issues. The unfortunate thing about both the book and the lesson, or about the lesson and the workshop, is because they are more complex tools, there's a smaller user base, and with a smaller user base, there are fewer people to vote for the tracker issues and submit issues and find issues. So that's one of the goals here, right? Is increase the user base so we make the tools better. I'm the lesson guru. Yeah, I don't think so, but I try hard. I've created a few. So anyway, with the lesson, I can do linear content delivery, and that way it would be very much like the book module, with the key difference being that in the lesson module, I get to create what the buttons look like. So you'll notice in this lesson here, I have previous and continue buttons. In the book, the buttons are built in. The other key difference, and this one really bums me out, is that in the lesson you cannot print the lesson like you can in the book. And I love that about the book. I do understand why that's more complicated in the lesson, but it still doesn't keep me from wanting it. So, and there are tracker issues on that. So if you want the lesson to print, we can figure out a way to make it happen. We can go vote for that. So where the lesson stands out and where it's different is that it can also be used for assessment. So in the lesson, I can integrate questions along the way. So I can ask a question and then allow the learner to go down a different path based on their response. If we think of a strictly, straightforward content and assessment kind of delivery, this is nice for engaging the learner. So I present a little bit of content, I ask a question, and I require that the learner has at least read something on that page to be able to answer that question. Think about this as an alternative to delivering a PowerPoint, a book, a document, where people will flip through pages and then realize halfway through that, I was thinking about something else, I didn't get that content. With the lesson, you require a certain level of engagement. It's a lot like what you're able to do in the classroom, and even more so with the ability to do adaptive instruction. With the adaptive instruction capability, or what I'm going to call adaptive instruction, I can ask a question. If the student picks A, which is the right answer, it'll lead them on to the next page. If they pick B, they're a little bit off, I can lead them down a new path that reteaches, remediates just a little bit, and then bring them back into the fold. If they pick C, I know, oh my gosh, they're completely lost. I can run them down a whole series of pages that reteaches, has more video, more audio, more instruction, more practice, and then bring them back into the lesson. This is where I see the power of the lesson, is in the ability to engage the learner and do the adaptive instruction. The same functionality also makes it really nice for delivering scenarios. The other thing the lesson will let you do is it'll let you create paths for the learner that lets them choose their own path, lets them do self-directed learning. So if you have a variety of topics, and it doesn't matter what order the students go through the content in, you can give them buttons, let them choose their own path. I've seen this used in a variety of ways. I've seen it used for web quests. I've seen it used in this example here. Pick a president that you would like to study and pick which path you'd like to go down. It gives the learners control. Also saw another example recently, people teaching software. With all the different versions of Microsoft Office out there, the course designer didn't want to have to write instructions for all of those different versions and try to lay those out side by side. So they created a page, an entry page, that let the learner choose the path and say, I'm using Office version 2010. So then they went down a path through the lesson that reflected 2010. So it does take a lot of work, can take a lot of work. Is there a clearinghouse of lessons someplace? The Moodle Hub has some content. You might check that out. The Moodle Features demo course has a couple of lessons. I'm pretty sure one of the lessons in my course came from there. I think the lesson about lessons, if I remember correctly, that lesson is there. The branching would enable a game, totally. Moodle Hub, that's hub.moodle.org, I think. Yes, Julianne says, to be honest, I prefer building games in the course now using conditionals rather than lessons. I think it depends on the level of the game, right? I think if I'm doing a scenario, for instance, yeah, I worked with a school once. They were delivering training to substitute teachers via the lesson module. And in that case, I'm really delivering content and I want to do some assessment along the way. I imagine in the lesson like a scenario that has a learner go through, a student walks into your class, they throw a pencil at your eye, what are you going to do? Your response is, I'm going to tackle the student. I'm going to throw a pencil back. I'm going to take them into the hall and talk to them quietly. So you can do some neat storytelling, choose your own adventure kinds of things there. The lesson at one level is appropriate for games. Conditional activities is another which I'll actually talk about. So hub.moodle.org, thanks for that link, and demo.moodle.net. And if you're wanting a copy of one of the lessons that I have in the course, I'm trying to think which ones I have in there. I was working in them earlier today. You'd think I'd remember. But some of those I can make available to you. Here's what I do recommend. If you are teaching others how to use the lesson, or if you are creating your own lesson for the first time, that first page of settings can be intimidating. Find another lesson, copy the settings they're using, and then build your first lesson, and then figure out what you like and don't like, and then go back in and change the settings to match. So if you want a copy of one of my lessons, I'm sure I can share one of those with you. Just send me an email. I'll share that at the end of the session. And I may also be able to upload just a backup of those. I will plan on doing that as well. So have dependency built in, yes. Similar to conditions, yes. Very good for training staff. Yes, copying, good idea. Yeah, no point in reinventing the wheel and going through all those settings and trying to figure out what they all mean. So the last way that you can use the lesson module is for flashcards. I know some people are using the flashcard module, and that's fine and good, but the lesson module is built in and it works. So you can use the lesson module for flashcards too. Just one setting that you have to change. Didn't pass that lesson. Yeah, that would be quite hard in certain circles, I would think. Google has lots of good answers, though, I'll tell you that much. So why use the lesson? One, it lets you chunk content, just like the book. It'll let you take content across pages. It does allow you to simplify delivery with the same way that the book does, really. Ease of access, ease of editing, talked about those with the book, same things apply. And then increase learner engagement. And that for me is the real key to using the lesson. When I think about an online course and I look at the number of courses where people are just posting documents, I think it's a shame, because if you don't really know beyond beyond the initial click, what your learners are doing with those documents. Are they reading them all the way through? Are they getting it? Do they know what I think is important? with the lesson, I can really teach the way I would teach in a face-to-face environment. I can ask a question. If you get it, we go on. If not, I teach it in a little bit different way. Does it take some work? Yes, but here's where I think outside of the box and I look at alternatives. One, student-generated content. The lesson interface, yes, that initial settings page can be intimidating, but once you get past that, and really once you know what to set there and you can set some defaults, creating the pages as a lesson isn't that hard. So you can create a lesson, give the student teacher rights to create that lesson, to create that content, and then let them build it. So think about the projects you're having your learners do now. This is going to be an academic example, but now I might have my learners create a PowerPoint presentation. That takes one level of understanding. Imagine how much more they have to understand, how much more they have to know to be able to create a lesson, to create different paths, to ask questions, to know what questions to ask, to know where to take learners when they answer that question incorrectly. The level of understanding is so much greater than just presenting some information, and so much more interesting for the student because they can incorporate all kinds of media, and students seem to like building quizzes for other students. So yeah, think outside of the box there. Also a nice alternative for learner projects. You can also use this as a project guide. As I mentioned before, in my own courses that I teach, I use the lesson as the way to guide the learners through their work. So I present a little bit of information, and then I say, okay, now go do this. Come back to the lesson, continue on. And that works really well. The students don't have to worry about where they left off. And then the scenario idea I really like as well. So other questions, comments in the chat? You can use the imports, copy lessons from one course to another. Yep. And a lesson can be shared from one Moodle to another. Yes. Yes, yes. So what I'll do after this session is I will make sure I'll create a backup of the lessons and the workshops that yeah, I'll create a backup of the lessons and the workshops in this course and put that backup file in as a link in that course so you can download those. Like I said, I don't know that I can distribute all of those, but I'll take a look through and see which ones I can share. And thanks for that link too, Mandy. Next on the list then, let's talk about the glossary. How many of you are using the glossary module? Oh, this is very good. Lots of glossary users. The glossary is one of the things that really truly makes Moodle stand apart. Like, I don't find glossary features in a lot of different learning management systems. Maybe I'm not looking at the right ones, but this is something that stands apart. It's another feature, though. People tend to use quizzes, forums, assignments. Those are things they're used to using. They fit with their frame of reference. The glossary tends to kind of fall off the list. People are less likely to explore it. I am happy to see so many of you using the glossary. I do think the rest of you that haven't tried it, you really are, there's so many possibilities. The glossary is my favorite Moodle module, and I have another session on Sunday, where I talk about the glossary module more in depth. We'll do a quick highlight overview then, now, and encourage you to come see the other session. So yeah, that's the games module, right, Mandy? That lets you connect to, yes. You can connect the games module, that's a plugin, with your glossary, and then you can create hangman games from entries in your glossary. So at the most basic, the glossary is good for a dictionary. It's good for vocabulary, good for terminology. And it has lots of features that make it really good at doing that. Beyond that, though, I really like the glossary as a resource collection. Now, Martin and I have a difference of opinion on this one a little bit. He would really love for me to say use the database for a resource collection, but I think that the glossary is a really nice starter tool for resource collections. Anytime I have to collect some stuff, the glossary I can set up in a matter of minutes, and the database takes me a little bit longer. Database has more functionality, but glossary meets my needs in most cases. Yeah, database has a big learning curve, especially if you want to make it look pretty. Um, so glossary, I use it in both these cases. Anytime I have a collection of stuff, I use the glossary. The auto-linking we already talked about. That makes it one of the killer features. There are a few others. It is searchable, which is fantastic. It makes it really easy to find information, find resources. So if I have a collection of web links, a collection of documents, a collection of tutorials, I can put those all in the glossary. It's completely searchable. You can categorize everything in the glossary. So you can have categories for different units, categories for different topics, categories for different departments. You can print the entire glossary with a click. You can search by keyword. You can allow your learners to make entries to the glossary and have their picture show up there, give them some ownership. You can do ratings and comments just like in the discussion forums. And like I said, I'll talk more about it on Sunday. But why use the glossary? One, it is so flexible. There's so many ways that I use the glossary, and that's why I can talk for a whole hour about it on Sunday. It allows for collaborative content generation. That means I can let my learners contribute content. It doesn't have to be me. A good example of this would be in a graduate course I teach. I ask my learners to talk about best practices in online course design. And you know, I could put some stuff together. I can Google stuff just as well as my students can. But if I have my learners create those best practices, then they're putting them all into a glossary. They're learning more from that experience. So yes, you can do multiple glossaries. The Games module is available from the Moodle plugins database. I don't have a link to that right off. If somebody doesn't post it here, post that in the discussion forum in my course, and we'll find it. Are the glossary entries joined to the submitter? No. You'll notice the one glossary, the best practices glossary in my course. Looks like I did 88 entries. Those actually came from my students, and then I exported the entries from that course and imported them into my course. Glossary can be edited. Their entries can be edited by, students can edit their own entries, not the entries of others. But here's a neat idea. You can have multiple entries on the same topic and then allow learners to vote on the best entries. If you delete the users, no, they're kind of like discussion forums. So the entries in the glossaries will remain even though the students are unenrolled. And you can embed videos and images. You can create ratings, Jennifer, on the glossary entries, just like you can do ratings in the discussion forum. So you can create your own rating scale. You could do a simple numerical, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of thing. Or you could also say, this is the best definition I've ever seen of this word. That's an outstanding resource, whatever you want the rating scale to say. Mandy, fantastic idea. Bovine encephalitis, yes. Well, and even for simple vocabulary that you think learners would know how to say, having the audio clip is there for those users. And it is possible to flesh out the student content in the reset of the course. Yeah. So auto-linking we talked about. Even better, the random glossary entry block, well, not better than auto-linking, but just making the glossary better in general, is you can connect your glossary to a block on the course page that randomly displays or sequentially displays entries from the glossary. So learners may not go seek out the definitions, but if you have the definitions or the resources appearing right on the course page, every time they reload the page every week, then you're putting that information right at their fingertips, and hopefully, you'll reach them at the moment they need it. And yeah, random glossary entry block is so cool. Yes, and because the entries remain, you could build upon the previous semesters. I empty out my glossaries every year, though, and make the students rebuild them from scratch. Really, really good stuff. Then I'll go ahead and pull into the course content, likely in other ways. So we'll call that good on the glossary. We talked about the auto-linking. There's an example of the random glossary entry block. got ahead of myself. Outside of the box possibilities for the glossary, and I'll talk more about these in that presentation, collecting websites, training materials, a collection of forms, frequently asked questions, user biographies, quote of the week, recipe collections, spelling lists, newsletters, on and on and on and on. Could have a whole glossary of glossaries. Reading through the chat. Yes, in my English classes, I haven't made a single vocabulary list. It was all the students' task. That's the way I work. Yep. Yeah, I like to build courses, and I'll talk about this some on the presentation I do on Monday. I like to build courses that are really just the framework, let the students do the learning. Student created glossary of quiz questions. Ah, good one. Hey, Teresa, along those lines, something you should check out is the question creator role. There's information in the Moodle docs on how to create this. Create it at the site level. You let the learners add the questions directly to your question bank in that case. You don't have to go through the glossary then and copy paste into the question bank. They can submit them directly to the question bank, not see your questions, not see other students' questions, and then you can weed them out or do whatever you want with from there. So check out that question creator role. It'll save you a couple steps. Yes, Moodle Docs question creator role. And if you don't find it, let me know. Students cannot edit each other's entries, or at least with the default roles. If you've not explored the permissions and capabilities in Moodle, I say basically everything is flexible, right? You could probably change the permission to let the students, you could probably change the permission to let students edit each other's glossary entries. Let's move on then. Let's go ahead and talk about the workshop. We've got a couple more tools to talk about, and we're running out of time. So how many of you are using the workshop? Let's get rid of that last poll question. As I said before, I think this was the very last tool I learned how to use. Julian and I are a match set. This is another one where I say get a sample, follow the sample, and then build from there. One thing you should know is that the workshop was rebuilt from Moodle 2, rebuilt from the ground up. They've made a lot of interface improvements. It's a lot simpler. I do still say, so you don't have to worry about all the options, all of the settings, then do go ahead and take a workshop that's been already built, follow those settings, and then go from there. Yeah, I was such a die-hard workshop fan, Todd, that I used it all the way through 1.9, and either I don't know, I've blocked them from my memory, or my implementations, I didn't have so many issues. I know there was stuff there. There were quirks. It's kind of the way I referred to them. There were quirks in 1.9. It's a lot better in 2. With that said, there are still some things I would like to see improved, but in a lot of the conversations in the tracker regarding the workshop, it's me and David. I think that's the right name. Yeah, me and David, the developer of the workshop, having conversations back and forth because there aren't enough other users to get involved. So it's hard for me to make a case all by myself. So we'll see if we can get some of you attached to the workshop module. I will post examples or backups of the workshops on in this course too. So the workshop module, at its most basic, is a peer review tool or a peer feedback tool. It basically automates the process for letting learners give feedback to each other, engages learners in giving feedback to each other. If you think back to when you're in school or if you teach school and you're trying to get learners to evaluate each other's work, the teacher often has to do more work than the learner does by the time they distribute all of the papers to be reviewed and all of the feedback and summarizes all of that. Yeah, it's just a lot of work for the for the instructor. The workshop automates all of it. It makes it wonderfully simple. With the workshop module, you have a few different ways that you can set things up to be reviewed. And as I say this, realize that the workshop module is good for big idea review. It's not ideal. It's not set up for you to go in and have students mark punctuation and capitalization and, you know, the minutiae or the details of a paper. What it is good for is, you know, any project, any idea, any video, any PowerPoint, any proposal, anything in which you would have a form to give feedback. The workshop is good for. And again, those of you in the corporate training space or non-academic space, there are applications in those spaces for this tool as well. So grading forms or evaluation forms, there's one for accumulative grading. So you're seeing an example here of what that looks like. You can do comments only. So if you want learners to look at each other's submissions and just give comments, you can do that. You can do very simple yes, no, objective kind of feedback. And this is what I often start with my learners to get them familiar with the workshop process. And then we move on to rubrics. And the rubric format is really nice too. I don't know if the latest version of the workshop, let's see. In recent versions of the workshop, the rubric form did not have a space for comments. I've got a tracker issue in on that one. I don't know if the version in 2.3 has comments yet or not. I don't remember. So, and then I'm going to back up and read the comments here. So why use the workshop module? Several different reasons. One, if you've bought into the workshop, if you've bought into Moodle for the whole social constructionist idea, then the workshop is the quintessential social constructionist activity. It really does allow learners to create, share, give feedback, and work together. It has all of those pieces. So it is a really nice way to get the learners involved. From a teacher's perspective or an instructor's perspective, I love that when I go through and I use the workshop to give feedback, I know the learners are not only seeing my feedback, but they're seeing feedback from several other students as well. So it's not just one perspective, it's multiple perspectives. I also know that my learners are better off for seeing how other learners approach the same task than just seeing the feedback that I give them. It's better all the way around. Automates the peer review process. So I tell the students what it is I want them to submit. I create the evaluation form, tell the students to make their submission. I then say I want every student to evaluate 3 other students' work. I can allocate those randomly or do them manually if I want to say this student has to grade this student. I like that with the workshop I can do directed and objective assessment. And what I mean by that is that if I do a discussion forum and I ask the learners, you know, take a look at this paper that these students submitted and tell me what you think about this, this, and this. The students might address those things, but there are no guarantees. With the workshop, I can create a form, and there are fields in that form for them to fill in and to focus their attention. And then the workshop also allows for grades for submission and review. So they get a grade for what they submit. They also get a grade for how they graded others. So if a student goes in and just gives everyone 100% all the way down, their final grade will be negatively impacted, depending on settings you define, of course. And then the last point here is that the workshop allows for rubrics. And up until the most recent version of Moodle, there wasn't really any other place in Moodle to use rubrics. So the workshop had that functionality, and you could kind of make it work to meet those needs for you. So it was something to consider. Now in Moodle 2.2, you do have rubric functionality on the assignment module, so you have a couple places to deal with that. So if you're interested in my thoughts about the workshop, or because I'm seeing people talking about features, on my SlideShare page there is a presentation about the workshop module. A lot of it was hands-on, so there's some key bits missing, but there's a list of tracker issues there that I've submitted that I think are important. We've made progress on some since that one was posted, but you might take a look. Looking back through, one of the improvements in 2 is in 1.9 it was always kind of the process was kind of hairy. There was no transparency for the learners about what the workshop was going to do, what was going to happen next. In Moodle 2, everything is transparent. So I have lost some automation in Moodle 2. I've picked a little bit of that back up in Moodle 2.3. It looks like I'm still not back where I was in Moodle 1.9 on that feature. But the learners have fewer issues with the workshop module than they had in 1.9. And learners are often telling me, I can't grade this because you're not in the right phase. So I'm looking back through the comments. Julian's comments here about needing to be phases. This is the argument I'm having with David, the developer. Is it's in 1.9 I could actually have multiple people in multiple phases at the same time. In 2 it's a little bit harder. But so would there be benefits for students commenting on each other's work to use workshop over database? Absolutely. Because with the workshop compiles all of the grades. You know, it has the evaluation form. Students fill in the evaluation form. The workshop says very specifically who needs to grade what. It's not, you know, me having to go through and say, hey, Todd, you go in and grade Julian and Stephen, and Leslie, you go in and grade Drew and Julian. I don't have to do all of that manually. The workshop facilitates all of that, and then the workshop also compiles all the data, compiles all the scores. So at the end, all I have to do is say, yes, I approve this stuff. I approve what the student submitted. And Moodle will release the grades and the feedback to the learners. So if you're doing peer review, the workshop really is designed for, it's really designed for that. So yeah, no need to grade. You're always 100%. Of course, Julian. Got it. And the workshop module, with the limited use that I see now, you know, there are a lot of resources out there for building books and lessons and some of the other tools we're talking about. The workshop, not as much, and I really am on a mission to get the workshop usage expanded. So if you have an idea for the workshop and implementation, but you need help making that happen, let me know, and I really am legitimately willing to help you make those things work, because we need more input, we need more feedback on how the workshop module works. All I know is my implementation. All I know is how my implementation works and what I think I need. I would like to see more input, more opinions. So would Lesson or Workshop allow for students to work through a package of material that would self-grade, and once completed they could move on? I think with the next feature I'm going to talk about, Conditional Activities, you might be able to do that. Workshop is not designed to be a self-grading feature. The lesson module would be self-grading, depending on how you build it. Yes, Leslie, good point. I like that too. So I can do the random allocation, and if I say, you know, these two guys aren't going to work very well together, then I can reset it. It's what I found in the past. If I do a lot of work trying to do a manual allocation, works just as well as if I would have done it randomly anyway. So I saved myself some time. So possibilities for the workshop: project review and feedback, glossary submission evaluation. I've had cases where I need more than just a single comment or a single rating for a glossary submission. So I create a workshop, and then we direct students to go look at the glossary submissions. Peer review of essays. I've had students evaluate their teammate contributions to the workshop. So you can set it up to be anonymous. And then presentation critiques. If you're in a face-to-face environment and you have students doing presentations in class, you can use the workshop to allow learners to evaluate each other's presentations. Nice idea here is you don't have to necessarily say every learner will evaluate every presentation, but they can be randomly assigned some presentations to review, and then when it comes time to watch those presentations, they know they have to go in and give feedback on those. Last feature on my list then, and we are running over, but I'm going to plow right on ahead until somebody tells me to stop. Conditional activities. How many of you are using conditional activities? You wouldn't dare. And the reason I include this one isn't necessarily because I think people aren't using it, but because I think they're using it in very traditional ways, and I want to encourage people to think outside of the box. So your favorite, the conditional activities is your favorite? Neat. I'm afraid that I haven't yet gotten too creative with the work with conditional activities. I have some ideas, but you know, time is always the factor, right? So conditional activities, for those not aware, is new to Moodle 2. So if you're still on 1.9, then this functionality is not going to be there for you. You have to wait until you get to Moodle 2. Realize that once you install or upgrade to Moodle 2, that conditional activities is turned off by default at the site level. It needs to be turned on at the site level, and then as an instructor, you decide whether or not that's turned on within your courses and how you use it. At its core, conditional activities is designed for restricting access to activities based on certain conditions, right? Conditional activities. Where I see a lot of people using it is in to support their need for control, to put it plainly. I guess a lot of people, and this is what I've seen over the years when people have requested this feature, they say, I want to make sure that the learner looks at this, this, and this before they're allowed to take the quiz. You know, my question, my skepticism says, well, what if they don't? You know, like, what's the harm if they can still pass the quiz? But anyway, so that's probably a traditional use for conditional activities. I think there are all kinds of other options, all kinds of possibilities. It sounds like we need to have a conversation with Julian at some point about how he does really cool gameplay stuff with it. I know there are several presentations out there like that. But so the features that exist with conditional activities, it is possible to release activities within your course based on date. I am really liking this feature. I teach a course each spring. Used to be in the past, I'd have to go in on Sunday night. I'd open up the week's content. Now, I go in at the start of the semester, I set the dates, and then every Sunday the new week's content opens up automatically for me. Yeah, teachers always want to be in control. Yeah. So, but Julian, as Julian says, we can finally do learning pathways or get yes. As I say, it gives you the ability to tailor the course to the performance of the learner, or as Julian says, have the courseware adapt to the skill of the learner. Exactly. And you don't have to have every learner go through the exact same content. You know, we've all been in that situation, right? You're going to make me read through these 47 pages of stuff I already know, and just to say I did it. And, you know, we can actually have the, it's okay. That's what I love about the iMoot is it's not a presentation, it's like a collaboration. So yeah, with the conditional activities, I can really create these adaptive learning environments and meet the learner at their level. Yeah, completion tracking. I like completion tracking a lot. The comment about it being restrictive for the learners. I'm not sure. I think it is possible to set up conditional activities to be restrictive, but yes, only if you make it so. So, features of conditional activities. You can set activities to be released based on grade, based on date. The grade feature here, notice that I can do it must be at least this and less than this. You can have a couple of different parameters. You can mix and match these things, by the way. You can do based on completion. So, did they complete this one activity before they can complete the other? And do they have a grade of more than 85% in the course? You can also say whether you want those activities to be visible or not. And there's a set of conditional activities or activities tied together based on conditions in the Keynote course. So you can see this in action. It's a really simple example, but You can see how it works. The idea behind the visible or not is if you are using conditional activities to tailor the instruction to the performance of the learner, you don't want everyone to know that there's this activity called more practice that you've designed just for the learner that's struggling. And you don't want everybody else to know that there's this really cool game link for the students that need some additional enrichment. So you can pick and choose. You can let the learner see that they have to meet these conditions, or you can make it invisible and have the course really evolve or appear based on how the learners are doing. So why I love conditional activities, it really does allow me to do differentiated instruction. When I taught in the classroom, I had like 45 minutes and 25 students, and I saw them once a day. As much as I wanted to be able to meet every student at their level, it just really wasn't possible. And with Moodle and the conditional activities, I really feel like I now have the tools that I can make that happen. It requires a shift in thinking for sure, and a shift in how I run my classroom, but I now have some tools. It also allows for self-directed learning. So if you have a course in which you have all of the content built at the start of the course, and you don't want the students to see everything all at once because it might be overwhelming, you can allow the learner to progress at their own pace through the activities and have the material revealed to them. And then you can, of course, control the release of content to make sure students can't see what you don't want them to see before they're ready to see it. Thinking outside of the box, increase engagement. So here's an idea that I've been thinking about. It's kind of like the idea of Easter eggs, right? So in my course, I want students to post to discussion forums. I want them to make glossary entries, and looking for creative ways to get them to do that. My thinking was I could set an activity. Let's say a certificate that would appear when the student made 3 posts to this discussion forum and 1 glossary entry. Just like random stuff that I want the learners to do anyway, maybe above and beyond the minimum requirements. But then at this point, the certificate appears. It says, "Congratulations, you've won a prize. Now you have you can come see me for a free candy bar," or the answer to 1 question on next week's test, or whatever you think will motivate your learners. You can hide these throughout your course. And I've seen presentations on this sort of idea before, and it shows that the learners will actually spend more time in your course because they're trying to figure out how to hit these things, how to find the Easter eggs, and they'll learn more, though. Their scores will be better because the more time they spend in the course, the more they're seeing your content. And it just kind of increases engagement, makes things a little more interesting. So think about that. There's some neat possibilities there. As Julian mentioned, you can also use conditional activities for gameplay. So you can have certain activities, you reach so many points or so many activities, then you get a certificate that says you level up. Bill says, is the location of the eggs the same for everyone? Yeah, but I can have all kinds of criteria, right? So I could say for this egg will appear when a student has a score below a 70% in the class and they've made 2 posts to this discussion forum and completed this quiz. So the idea here for me is that it's completely random combination of things. And if I do some of those combinations with things that my struggling learners might hit, then they get a certificate or they get a prize or they get this notice. And then there's some other things that are set to criteria that I think only my stronger learners might find, and yet others that are completely random. So reading through Todd's and Drew's comments. Yeah, I could take them on a completely separate course. I may have missed some comments up above. Yeah, so when one finds, well, my hope is actually that they will tell everyone else, right? They'll start to say, and it won't be an announcement, but it'll be a sort of thing where somebody says, hey, I got this thing, did you get one? And they'll start talking, and then they'll start doing a little, it's just like a video game, where people find these, hey, did you find this? No, how did you do that? Well, I don't know, people work to figure it out. The other idea is that you could let your learners know ahead of time at the start of the course that there are some hidden prizes within the course, and that it's up to them to figure out how to get them. So, as we wrap up here, what I want you to think about next is what tool you're going to use next. What are you going to try? What have you not tried before? Get ready to step outside of that box, step outside of that comfort zone. Don't think about trying to use them all. That's not my objective here. Think about one that you can try. Think about the sessions you're going to go to that'll help you meet those goals. Can you choose more than one? Let's start with one. You have to start somewhere, right? And as you respond there and post any other questions that you might have, I'll go ahead and put up my contact information. There's my email address there. I'm totally sincere about the ability or my willingness to help you set up workshops. Twitter feed, SlideShare page. And I'm happy to answer questions. I do know there's another session starting any time now, right? Or starting very shortly. I can point you to training. I can point you to resources, Jennifer. The workshop is a bit unique in that you can call me up and I'll help you out, and I won't send you an invoice. But just because there are not as many resources on those. But I'm happy to help you, and I'm sure that the community here at the iMoot will help you. And send me an email. Thanks so much for the input, everybody. I'm going to have to go back through and read through the chat. I feel like I missed half the presentation.
Sorry, it's Julian here, just quickly jumping in. I'm sadly about to have to jump out myself to get the next two sessions ready. I wanted to make sure I did a big thank you to Michelle, obviously, for coming in and doing such a fantastic presentation. Looking at the Twitter feed, many people have learnt so much from that already. So thank you very much for the information. If you're in the US, bear in mind that Michelle's also at the Mountain Moot coming up, I think in 2 or 3 days' time. So if you're in the US and want to catch Michelle in person, do make sure you check out the Mountain Moot. Otherwise, feel free to stay here and do some talking, and the next session is due to start in about 13 minutes, so we'll see you around.
Hey, Kim, to answer your question, make sure to go into your profile, and this applies to anyone for that matter. Make sure to go into your profile, and on your profile, set your time zone to your time zone. And then when you look at the schedule for the Moot, make sure you're logged in, and then all of the times will magically appear in your time zone. I don't know how they did it. It's very cool. But yeah, if you change the time zone in your profile, then all of the times should be right for you. give it another look, I guess. Yes. Yeah, very helpful.